She accidentally called the CEO babe in the elevator. But what he did next made her fall madly in love. She was laughing into her phone, coffee in one hand, papers in the other, when she said it. "Morning, babe." The elevator went silent, because the man beside her wasn't her boyfriend. It was the CEO. And his response, let's just say, no one saw it coming. Before we continue, if you enjoy touching and inspiring stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Now, let's get back to the story. The elevator doors slid shut with a faint hiss, and Lila Carter, juggling her iced coffee, her overstuffed tote, and a call from her boyfriend, let out a soft laugh. Okay, I promise I'll text you once I get to my desk," she said into her phone, nudging the corner of a folder that was sliding out from under her arm with her elbow. "You're ridiculous. Bye." "Babe." She ended the call, still smiling, and turned to the figure standing beside her, someone who had quietly stepped in during her distracted shuffle. "Morning, babe," she said brightly. A beat of silence, a sharp gasp behind her, another. Then came the laughter. Soft at first, then louder. She blinked, confused, and finally looked up. Her smile dropped. It wasn't Ryan. It wasn't anyone she knew. It was him, Grayson Reed, the CEO, the one who never smiled, who walked through the 42nd floor like a ghost everyone feared to disturb, the man who turned entire departments to ash with a single sentence in quarterly reviews. Lila's stomach turned to water, her fingers curled tightly around the coffee cup as heat rushed up her neck and into her face like wildfire. "Oh my God," she whispered, backing into the corner of the elevator, eyes wide. I thought you were someone else. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean—" Behind her, two suited analysts from finance snorted. One of them whispered something behind a raised hand. Another stifled a laugh. Grayson turned. The space went dead silent. He looked directly at the two men, eyes cool, unreadable. And then he spoke, calm, level, but loud enough for every floor to hear. "That's enough." His gaze lingered on them for one chilling beat. Then he turned to Lila. "She's the only one here who actually works." The silence deepened. Someone coughed. Another stepped back like they weren't sure if they'd just witnessed a joke, a reprimand, or a declaration of war. And then, ding, the elevator doors opened on the executive floor. Grayson stepped out without another word. Lila stood frozen, still gripping her coffee, a drip of condensation running down onto her knuckles. No one else moved. Back at her desk, Lila could still feel the echo of that moment in her chest. Her face was flushed, fingers trembling slightly as she tried to restack the mess of papers she'd dropped earlier. Her assistant badge caught on the edge of her blouse. She swore softly under her breath and yanked it free, nearly knocking over the little ceramic figurine her niece had given her, a tiny fox wearing reading glasses. That little fox had been with her since her first day, a silent reminder of her family, her roots, and her reason to keep going when the job felt overwhelming. Her niece had said, "Auntie Lila, it's your smart fox. He's good at surviving anywhere." She stared at the figurine now. "You think I survived that?" she muttered. "Miss Carter?" Her head jerked up. Eva, the executive secretary, sharp, polished, with a voice like chilled champagne, stood at her cubicle, one eyebrow raised. "Mr. Reed would like to see you in his office, now." Lila blinked. I have that meeting in 15 minutes with HR, and I haven't—" Eva simply turned and began walking, of course. No one said no to Grayson Reed. His office was a world apart from hers. Floor-to-ceiling windows flooded the space with light, reflecting off gleaming dark wood and brushed steel. The skyline stretched behind him like a kingdom. Grayson stood with his back to it, jacket off, sleeves rolled once at the cuffs. Lila stepped in and immediately felt like her sneakers had no business touching that carpet. "You wanted to see me?" He looked up from the tablet in his hand. "Close the door." The click of it shutting sounded too final. She fidgeted with the strap of her tote. About this morning, I'm so sorry, sir. It was a mistake. I wasn't looking, and I know. She blinked. You know? You were on a call, he said, placing the tablet down. You ended it, said goodbye, and didn't check who you were speaking to. It was clearly not meant for me. I'm not offended. Her mouth opened, closed. You're not? He looked at her for a long moment. You're the only person who's ever called me babe in a room full of directors and lived to tell about it. That's something. And then, just barely, the corners of his mouth twitched upward. Leela's jaw dropped. He was smiling. Was there something else? She asked, voice tight. He nodded toward the chair opposite his desk. Sit. I have a proposition. She hesitated. Is this HR related? He gave a small huff. No, it's work. Sit. Lila perched on the edge of the seat, still clutching her tote. He poured himself a cup of coffee from the carafe at the sideboard and paused. Cream? She blinked. Oh. Just milk and 1 sugar. He returned a moment later and slid a mug toward her. She stared at it. You brought me coffee? I brought you a job opportunity. She tilted her head. There's a position opening on the internal creative strategy team, he continued. It's temporary, but high visibility. You'd be assisting on a cross-functional project, a step up. She swallowed. I thought I wasn't even on that team's radar. You are now. Because I called you. He raised a hand. Because you handle 3 departments scheduling, juggle budgets better than finance, and still bring donuts on Wednesdays. I notice what works. You work. The heat in her cheeks returned, but softer this time. Thank you, she said quietly. He nodded once. You'll start Monday. I'll send the onboarding brief. She stood slowly, the coffee in hand, warm now, comforting in her palm. At the door, she paused. You really weren't offended? He didn't look up from the tablet. No, but do me one favor. Sure. Try not to call me babe in front of the board next time. Lila laughed, actually laughed, and covered her mouth in horror. He smirked without looking up. She stepped out, cheeks still pink, and passed Eva on the way down. The woman raised one perfectly plucked brow. Well, she said coolly, he doesn't usually pour coffee for people. Lila blinked. He doesn't? No. Eva leaned in, her tone dropping to a whisper. And he definitely doesn't smile. Back at her desk, Lila sipped the still-warm coffee and stared at her inbox, now with a new meeting invite from G. Reed, titled Strategic Initiative Kickoff, Monday. And below it, a second message. Subject, new role prep, body. I'll need you to attend dinner Friday. Casual. It's with the partner team. Wear something comfortable. G. She read it twice, then a third time. Dinner with the CEO. Her fingers tightened slightly around the cup as she set it down beside her little fox figurine, heart fluttering with a question she didn't dare ask aloud. Leela reread the email for the 4th time. Dinner Friday. Casual. It's with the partner team. Wear something comfortable. Gee. Her heart thudded with that awkward mix of panic and possibility. She wasn't sure what part of the message confused her more, the casual tone, the vague purpose, or the fact that he signed it with just a letter. Gee. She could still hear Eva's voice from earlier. He doesn't smile. He doesn't pour coffee. And now he was inviting her to dinner? She clicked open her calendar, pretending to focus as her co-workers milled around behind her. But all she could do was stare at the blinking cursor in the Friday block, like it might explain itself. By Thursday afternoon, word had started to spread. Lila Carter's getting promoted, someone whispered outside the kitchenette. No, it's just a project role. I think she's filling in, another voice corrected. Then why is she having dinner with the CEO? Lila stepped back before they saw her. She gripped her cup, eyes on the floor, praying for invisibility. Her sneakers made the softest squeak as she turned away. It was barely a sound, but it felt like a siren. By the time she got back to her desk, Someone had already left a donut on her keyboard. She looked around. No note. No one even glanced her way. But the pink frosting was her favorite. The little fox on her desk sat watching it all, its head tilted as if amused. "You know what?" she said to the figurine, lowering into her chair. "You could at least blink if something's about to go terribly wrong." It didn't. That evening she called her sister. "I don't know what to wear. For a meeting?" "No, for a dinner with my boss." There was a pause. "Oh," her sister said, "that kind of dinner?" "No, it's work, I think." "Maybe." He said, "casual and comfortable," which means, what? A hoodie? A linen dress? A suit made of clouds? Take a deep breath. "I can't. I'm holding 6 options and none of them have sleeves." They both burst out laughing. And for the first time since Tuesday, Lila exhaled. Friday came too fast. Her outfit, after 3 meltdowns and 1 emergency steamer session, was a soft sage blouse tucked into high-waisted navy trousers, paired with low-tan heels, polished but breathable, professional but not stiff. She even added a silver bracelet for good luck. As she left her desk at 5:56 p.m., she paused and tapped the fox on the head. "Wish me luck." She could have sworn it was smirking. The restaurant was nestled into the corner of a quiet downtown street, upscale but not flashy. Warm lights in the windows, cloth napkins, actual silver cutlery. When she stepped inside, her stomach dropped. Grayson was already seated, alone, and he was wearing jeans. Jeans, dark, perfectly pressed, designer jeans, but still. "You said casual," she blurted as she approached the table. He looked up, mildly amused. "You said comfortable. You look tense." "That's because I feel like I'm meeting royalty while dressed for a TED Talk." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. She sat, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, cheeks warming. "Where's the partner team?" she asked, scanning the room. He poured her a glass of water from the chilled bottle at the table. "Running late." She took a sip, her eyes narrowing slightly. "They're not coming, are they?" He didn't answer. Instead, he picked up a menu and handed it to her. "I thought you might enjoy something other than vending machine coffee and desk salads." She stared at him. "You brought me here to eat?" "To talk," he corrected. "And to eat," she blinked again. "This feels very not HR compliant. If that's a concern, we can log it." "No, I just..." She exhaled. "I don't know what's happening." "You've been underestimated for too long," he said calmly, setting down his glass. "I don't plan to repeat that mistake." Lila stared at him, really stared. The low lighting made his steel blue eyes look softer. There were faint lines near the corners of his mouth now that she hadn't noticed before. Something in her chest fluttered, and she looked away quickly, pretending to study the menu. When the waiter arrived, they both ordered. Lila chose the mushroom risotto. Grayson ordered steak, medium rare. Conversation came in waves, quiet, careful. At one point, he asked about her niece. She was so surprised he remembered she almost choked on her bread. Then came the first laugh, hers, when she accidentally flicked a piece of arugula onto the white tablecloth. His laugh came a moment later, rare, deep, quick to fade. The meal passed with something almost like comfort. They were just finishing the last bites of dessert when his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. His entire expression changed. Tense, guarded, back to the man in the elevator. "Is everything okay?" she asked. He looked up as if debating something. Then he slid the phone across the table. The screen showed an email. Just one line. "You really think the assistant's qualified? The board will love this when it leaks. Kay." Lila felt her stomach sink. "Who's Kay?" Grayson's jaw tightened. "Someone who'd rather keep things exactly the way they've always been." She stared at the screen again. The word that clung to her chest wasn't qualified. It was leaks. "Is this about me?" His silence said everything. She pushed the plate away. And just like that, The easy warmth of the evening drained from her fingers. Because this wasn't just dinner anymore. This was a storm building just beneath the surface. And someone had already started whispering her name into the wind. Lila's fingers hovered over the tablecloth inches from the phone as though touching it would make the message real. Her appetite had vanished. So had the soft glow from the candle on the table. Everything felt sharper now and louder. Colder, heavier. "You're being targeted because of me?" she asked quietly. "No," Grayson replied. "You're being targeted because someone sees you as a threat." She gave a disbelieving laugh. "I'm an assistant. I file reports. I reschedule meetings when people double-book yoga and finance reviews." "You also built a cross-department workflow that saved us 6 figures last quarter," he said calmly. "And you're liked. That matters more than you think." Her throat tightened. "Who's Kay?" she asked. He leaned back in his chair, jaw tight. "Kenneth Drummond, one of the older board advisors. His son was up for the same temporary strategy role." Ah, there it was, the shape of the storm. "Let me guess, he didn't bring donuts on Wednesdays," Grayson almost smiled. "He also doesn't know the difference between a calendar hold and an actual meeting invite." Lila tried to smile back, but it didn't land, not fully. Her mind was already spiraling. This could ruin me," she whispered. "If people think I'm here because of you, because of this dinner, it doesn't matter what I've done." "You think I don't know that?" he said, quietly but firmly. "You think I don't see how this looks?" She didn't answer. She couldn't. His expression shifted. Less CEO, more man. "I wouldn't have asked you here if I didn't believe in you." That stopped her. She looked up. He meant it. And for the first time she wasn't just an assistant to him. She was a person. With value, with a future. "I still shouldn't have called you babe in the elevator," she muttered. That earned a real laugh from him. Low and brief, but honest. "I've been called worse, usually by board members." They walked out into the night together, the sidewalk cool and quiet beneath the city lights. The restaurant's golden windows cast long shadows behind them as they stepped into the street. He didn't offer to drive her home. He didn't ask to walk her to her apartment. Instead, they stood near the curb, just 2 professionals under a street lamp, with something deeper lingering in the air. "Next week might get noisy," he said. "I can try to shield you, but I can't stop them from talking." Lila crossed her arms, her coat drawn tight around her. "I've been talked about before. It doesn't scare me." "It should," he replied. "You deserve better." She looked up at him, something unspoken between them. His words were simple, but they carried weight. He nodded once, a quiet goodbye, and stepped into the waiting car, leaving her alone on the sidewalk, heart racing with things she didn't know how to name. Saturday came with the silence of routine. Lila made coffee in her tiny kitchen, the same chipped mug, the same view of the alley below, but everything felt different. She sat on her worn couch, legs folded beneath her, staring at her laptop. The rumors were spreading faster now. There was a post on the company's anonymous forum. "Funny how some people skip 5 steps and land in the CEO's dinner plans," a reply. "She must be really talented to move up that fast." She closed the laptop. Her fingers trembled. Across the room, the little fox figurine watched from her bookshelf, its tiny glasses crooked from the time she dropped it during last year's blackout. She walked over and picked it up, holding it in her palm. "You were supposed to bring me luck," she murmured. But all she could feel was shame creeping in, not because she'd done anything wrong, but because people believed she had. And that was worse. On Monday morning, the office felt changed. People smiled too brightly. Some didn't look at her at all. A few whispered. One paused in front of her desk, as if they expected her to say something, to deny it or confirm it or explode. She did none of those things. She adjusted her turquoise blouse, smoothed her mustard skirt, and typed her notes like always. But when she opened her top drawer, she saw something that made her stop. A tiny sticky note, in block letters, "Smart foxes don't care what the hens cluck about," no signature, just that. Her hand covered her mouth. It wasn't much, just words, but it was enough. Somebody believed in her. Later that day, her first strategy meeting took place in one of the glass-walled conference rooms on 42. She entered with her folder, her planner, and her chin lifted just a little higher than usual. Grayson was already inside, along with 3 department leads, none of whom looked pleased to see her. Kenneth Drummond wasn't there, but his presence hovered in the air like perfume left too long on an expensive coat. "Let's begin," Grayson said, tapping his Mont Blanc pen on the table. Layla opened her folder. She was ready, or she thought she was. Halfway through the meeting, one of the execs slid a folder across the table toward her, too casually. "You might want to review this before the board meeting, since it involves your previous responsibilities." The way he said "previous" made her blood run cold. Inside the folder was a printed email from Lila, one she'd never sent, accusing Grayson of favoritism, framing herself as the victim of his attention, full of flattery and false quotes. She looked up, breath caught. Breath. The execs were watching, waiting, and Grayson's eyes were already scanning the page. The room felt colder. Lila stared at the printed email, unable to speak. Her pulse thudded in her ears, louder than Grayson's quiet voice as he read it silently beside her. His expression was unreadable, not anger, not confusion, but something harder to name, something that made her chest tighten. The other department leads were too quiet. One leaned back in his chair, arms crossed like he was watching a scene he already knew the ending to. Another tapped her pen on the table, pretending not to look pleased. "This isn't mine," Lila said softly. "I didn't write this." The exec who had passed her the folder tilted his head. "It came from your work account." "No, it didn't." Grayson finally looked up, his voice calm but unmistakably sharp. "It didn't. I checked the metadata." The exec stiffened. "I pulled the logs myself last night," Grayson continued, sliding the folder back across the table. "This was written from an external device, spoofed through a mirror account." He turned to Lila. "You didn't send it." Relief flooded her so fast it left her lightheaded. She sat back, blinking hard. "But someone wanted it to look like I did." Grayson nodded. "And now we know who." The room went still. He didn't say a name. He didn't have to. But one of the executives suddenly found something very interesting on his phone screen. Lila gathered the folder in her lap, her fingers still trembling slightly. "Should I leave?" she asked, voice quieter than she meant. "No," Grayson said firmly. "You're staying. We've barely started." After the meeting, he walked her back to her desk. Not a word was spoken between them in the elevator, but she felt his presence like armor at her side. When they stepped onto her floor, people noticed. Of course they did. Some turned away. One woman actually stood up and walked toward the copier, just to avoid passing them directly. Grayson didn't acknowledge any of it. At her cubicle, Lila turned to thank him, but he stopped her with a small gesture. "You don't owe me anything." Her eyes met his. "Someone forged that message." "I know. They tried to break me." He looked at her for a long moment. "And they didn't." Then, without another word, he walked away. That evening, Lila didn't go straight home. Instead, she ducked into a small cafe 3 blocks from the office, one she used to visit every Friday before she started working late. It smelled like cinnamon and second chances. She found a quiet corner booth and sat down. Phone face down on the table, her coffee cooling beside her. She didn't want noise. She wanted stillness. Her fingers brushed the edge of the ceramic fox she'd tucked into her coat pocket before leaving the office. The little figurine had started to feel less like a trinket and more like a secret talisman. She placed it on the table in front of her like a silent companion. she thought of her niece's voice. Smart foxes always survive. But even foxes must feel tired sometimes. The barista arrived with a slice of lemon cake she hadn't ordered. "From the gentleman at the counter," she said. Lila frowned and turned, but there was no one there. Just the faintest echo of someone who might have been. A coat brushing the doorframe, a tall figure disappearing into the night. She smiled anyway. It was the first bite of anything sweet she'd tasted all day. The next morning, an envelope was waiting on her desk. No name, no stamp, no handwriting. Inside, a single flash drive and a sticky note. It wasn't just forged, it was planned. She stared at the drive like it might burn her fingers. Grayson's office was quiet. He looked up as she entered, didn't ask how she got past Eva. "I need your help," she said. He gestured to the chair. She handed him the envelope. He plugged the drive into his tablet, watched the screen carefully. Then his eyes narrowed. "It's surveillance footage." "From where?" He didn't answer right away, just turned the screen so she could see. The video was grainy, clearly from a maintenance cam. It showed an office, not hers, not his, but familiar. Lila leaned closer. "That's Michael's desk?" Michael, the IT manager, the one who once bragged he could unlock anyone's inbox in 10 seconds flat, just for fun. He was sitting at a terminal, typing something. Another figure stood over him. Lila froze. Kenneth Drummond. He was pointing, directing, smiling. Grayson paused the frame. "Still think you're just an assistant?" Her hands curled into fists in her lap. "Why would they go this far? Why me?" "Because you walked into a room where they were never expecting someone like you to belong," he said, "and you didn't flinch." Lila stared at the screen again. "I don't want revenge," she whispered. "I just want my name back." "Then we'll get it." She looked at him. That evening, back at her apartment, Lila placed the fox figurine on the windowsill. The setting sun lit up its tiny glasses, casting a soft shadow against the curtain. She made tea, sat quietly. Watched the light fade. She knew this wasn't over. People like Kenneth didn't go down quietly. And somewhere inside the company, there was still someone whispering lies in the dark. She was finally starting to see just how deep this went. What she didn't know yet, and what she couldn't possibly guess, was that the next blow wasn't going to come from a boardroom, but from someone much closer than she thought. Lila didn't sleep that night. She lay awake with the soft light of her phone casting a glow across the bedroom ceiling, the image of Kenneth standing over Michael, replaying again and again in her mind. The cursor in her thoughts blinked just like it had on her laptop screen, waiting for an answer she didn't know how to type. At 2:13 a.m., she gave up trying. She got out of bed, wrapped herself in her worn blue cardigan, and shuffled barefoot to the kitchen. The kettle whistled low, steam curling upward as she poured water over chamomile leaves. The city outside her window blinked quietly, a few windows still lit, one cab waiting on a corner. The kind of stillness that feels like it's listening. She turned toward the window to check on her little fox, but it was gone. Heart skipping, she scanned the sill. Then she saw it, lying on the floor, face down. She bent to pick it up. It wasn't broken, just knocked over, probably by the wind. But something about seeing it there, fallen, fragile, silent, sent a lump to her throat she hadn't expected. She sat at the table and held it in her palm. "You're supposed to be the smart one," she whispered. Saturday morning her sister called. "Hey, I was just thinking of you." "Really?" "Yeah. I woke up from a dream where you were wearing a blazer made of croissants and yelling at a fox." Lila blinked. That's weirdly close to reality. Her sister laughed, warm, full-bodied, the kind of laugh that always managed to crack Lila's shell. "I just wanted to check on you," she said. "You've sounded off." Lila hesitated. "I'm in the middle of something big, at work." There was a pause. "Big bad or big good?" "Both." More silence, then, "Are you okay?" It was the way she asked it. Not politely, not casually, but deeply. The kind of question that knows there's something beneath the surface, waiting to be spoken. "I think so," Layla said, "but it's hard to tell." Her sister exhaled into the phone. "You know, you've always had this way of carrying everything on your own, but you don't have to." "I'm not alone." "You sure?" Layla looked at the fox in her hand. She thought of Grayson's voice. "Then we'll get it." "Yeah," she said softly. "I'm sure." Later that afternoon, Grayson texted her. "Meet me at the South Archive Room, 3rd floor. Come alone." Layla stared at the message. The wording was dramatic, like something from a spy film. She even checked to make sure it wasn't a prank, but it was real. 15 minutes later, she was standing in front of a storage room so dull and gray that it practically screamed, "Nothing important happens here." Inside, Grayson was already waiting. He held up a folder when she entered. The IT manager confessed. Her eyes widened. He said Kenneth offered him a promotion, promised to make him director of digital infrastructure if he helped slow down the strategy project. Layla sat down on a crate. And by slow down, he meant sabotage? He meant destroy. She rubbed her eyes. "What do we do with this?" "Nothing yet. We don't move until the board votes next week. You're just keeping this quiet?" "For now." He handed her the folder. "But there's something else." She flipped it open. Inside was a screenshot as a calendar invite. From someone in her own department. "To Kenneth Drummond, last Tuesday, 9:30 a.m. "Why would someone on my team send him a meeting request?" she asked, already dreading the answer. "Because they're the one who gave him your access credentials." Her stomach turned. "Who?" Grayson hesitated. Then he handed her a photo. "A security camera still?" Layla's heart dropped. It was Amanda, her teammate, desk neighbor. The one who always offered to grab extra paper, the one who knew where she kept her snacks, the one who borrowed her login credentials just for a minute. Last week, when Layla was rushing to a meeting, she felt dizzy. That evening, Layla sat alone on her balcony, knees drawn to her chest. The city was louder now. Even the stars felt distant. She stared at her phone for 10 minutes before hitting call. Grayson answered on the second ring. "I thought you might need to yell," he said gently. "I don't want to yell," she murmured. "Oh, what do you want?" "I don't know." He was quiet for a while, then, "When this is over, I want to take you somewhere quiet." Layla blinked. "What?" "A place where no one knows your name, or mine, just trees and silence. Maybe a boat." She laughed through her nose. "That sounds like an oddly specific fantasy." "I like oddly specific fantasies," he said. And for once it didn't sound like a joke. There was another pause. She let it stretch. Then, "I trusted her." "I know. I keep thinking there's something wrong with me, like maybe I bring this on myself." "No. But it keeps happening." He cut her off. "Layla." Her name on his voice quieted her. "You don't deserve any of this. You never did." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full. Full of all the things neither of them were ready to say, but both of them felt. She looked down at the little fox sitting on her railing. Its glasses caught the faint streetlight again. "I'm going to fight back," she whispered. Grayson didn't reply, but she knew he was still there, and when she hung up, she wasn't shaking anymore. The next morning, she walked into the office before anyone else. She sat at her desk, powered up her laptop, and found a new message waiting in her inbox. No subject line, just one sentence. "If you go public with this, the photo will leak," and beneath it, an attachment. Layla clicked and stopped breathing. It was a still frame from the night of the dinner, she and Grayson laughing, close, too close. It looked like something it wasn't, but it would be enough to ruin them both. Layla didn't move. The image on her screen stared back like it was daring her to blink. She and Grayson, sitting too close, laughing over dessert, a wine glass between them. A moment frozen in time, the kind that could be misinterpreted with just the right amount of malice. The subject line said nothing. The message below it said everything. If you go public with this, the photo will leak. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard. But what was there to type? Don't threaten me. You're wrong? Please? No. They wanted her afraid, small, shaken. She closed the email, but not before forwarding it to a secure folder Grayson had helped her set up, just in case. Then she stood up and walked straight to the break room. Not to cry, to breathe. The light was soft there, early morning sun coming through dusty blinds. The coffee pot still half full from whoever opened up. She poured a cup, black, no sugar. Her hands shook a little as she lifted it to her lips. A rustle behind her. She turned. Ava, the last person she had the energy for. But Ava didn't sneer this time. She didn't look polished or cold, just curious. You look like you've seen a ghost, she said mildly. I think I might be one soon, Lila murmured. Ava leaned against the counter, tilted her head. You know, I've worked here 11 years, she said. I've seen a lot of people come and go. Most of them tried to survive by making themselves invisible. Lila stared into her cup. And you? She asked quietly. Eva gave a small smile. I wore heels that made noise. Later that morning, Grayson didn't wait for her to come to him. He walked to her desk, in plain sight. He said nothing, just held up 2 coffee cups and nodded toward the stairwell. They climbed to the rooftop and the quiet garden space most employees forgot existed. Up here, the city felt further away, softer. The wind pushed her hair gently into her eyes. He handed her one of the cups. It wasn't from the office machine. It was her favorite cafe blend, hazelnut with oat milk. How did you... You mentioned it once, he said, sitting beside her on the old stone bench. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she said it. They have a photo. His hands didn't move. His eyes didn't blink. Of what? That night, the dinner. It looks closer than it was. It's not incriminating, but it's suggestive enough. Blackmail? She nodded, implying that if we expose what Kenneth did, they'll leak it, paint it as a power play, favoritism, you and me. He took a slow sip of his coffee. Let them. She stared. What? I don't care what they say about me. But I do, she said. About me, I care. That made him pause. I worked to build my name here, she continued. I made myself useful, earned trust. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to be proud of what I made. You still can. Not if they turn me into some executive's pet. Grayson turned to her. You are nobody's pet. Lila, the way he said it, low, clear sour, hoik dem, made her throat tighten. You think I don't know what this looks like? He continued. I do. I've seen how fast respect can turn into suspicion, how women like you get rewritten by men like them. She blinked hard but said nothing. So here's what we do, he said. We fight, transparently, together. We tell the truth before they twist it. We bring it all into the light. You mean go public? On purpose? He nodded once. With the facts, the evidence, the security footage, the forgery, we'll submit it directly to the ethics committee. She let the idea sit in her chest. I'm scared, she admitted. So am I, he said softly. It was the first time she'd heard that from him, and it was exactly what she needed. That afternoon, Lila went home early. She needed space, to think, to feel, to stop performing. She changed into soft clothes, made a grilled cheese sandwich, and curled up by the window with a notebook in her lap. The little fox sat beside her plate. She stared at the blank page for a while before writing, What I will not give up for anyone. She paused, then added, My voice, my dignity, my name, my story. Her phone buzzed. Grayson. Just a simple message. Press day tomorrow. Board at 2 p.m. I'll be beside you the whole time. G. She smiled, just slightly, then looked at her little fox, gave its ear a gentle tap. Tomorrow we make noise. At 9:12 a.m. the next day, Lila stepped into the executive boardroom, her head held high, hair pinned back, no flashy makeup. No apologies in her walk. Grayson stood waiting by the window, but someone else was already seated at the table. Amanda. Lila froze. Amanda smiled, and with the softest, sweetest voice she said, "Oh, good, you got my message." The words hung in the air like perfume, sweet, rehearsed, and meant to disorient. "Oh, good, you got my message." Lila stood frozen just inside the boardroom, hand still on the door handle. Grayson had turned sharply toward Amanda, jaw tightening. Amanda, flawless in her cream blazer and subtle lipstick, sipped from the glass of water in front of her like she was already chairing the meeting. Lila blinked. "You sent that email?" Amanda tilted her head. "Not directly, of course, but let's not pretend we don't both know how things work." Grayson stepped forward, voice calm but loaded. "You accessed Lila's login, you scheduled meetings behind her back, and you sent Kenneth confidential information about the strategy project." Amanda's smile didn't even twitch. "I did what I needed to," she said. "The rest of you just got sentimental?" Lila stared. "Why?" Amanda turned to her, as if only now acknowledging her as a participant in the conversation. "You're a junior assistant, Lila. You bring charm and coffee and color-coded spreadsheets, but suddenly you're at the CEO's table?" "That was supposed to be me." Lila's voice cracked before she could control it. "You think I didn't earn this?" "I think," Amanda said evenly, "you were convenient, different, easy to hold up as the company's little progress story." Grayson stepped forward, his tone darkening. "You gave a forged email to the board?" "You tried to blackmail us." Amanda didn't flinch. "No. I gave the board what they were already whispering. I just wrote it down." Lila's chest burned, but underneath the hurt, something else was rising. Not rage, resolve. "You could have come with me," Lila said quietly. "I would have fought for you, too." Amanda's eyes flickered, a crack. Small, but there. "I've been here 6 years," she whispered. "They never saw me until you said babe in an elevator." The silence that followed was suffocating. Then came Eva's voice from the doorway. "Board members will be joining in 10. Amanda stood, smoothed her blazer, and turned to Grayson. "Your move." She walked out, heels sharp against the marble. Lila sank into one of the empty chairs, her pulse still ringing in her ears. Grayson sat beside her. "You okay?" he asked gently. "No," he nodded. "Good. That means you still care." Lila looked down at her lap. Her hands were clasped tightly together. A single line of ink on her left palm caught her eye. She'd scribbled it without thinking that morning while holding the fox figurine. "Don't let them choose your silence." She reached into her bag, pulled out the little ceramic fox, placed it gently on the boardroom table in front of her. Grayson raised an eyebrow. "She's watching," Lila said softly. "So I better say what needs to be said." At 2 p.m. sharp, the board filed in. Kenneth was last. He took his seat without looking at either of them. The air was so still, it felt staged. The board chair cleared her throat. "We've received concerning materials regarding a breach of company ethics involving the CEO and an assistant. We'd like to give you both the opportunity to respond before we determine next steps." Grayson didn't speak. Lila stood. Her legs shook slightly, but her voice, clear, steady, honest. "There's been a lot of noise this week," she began, "about what I am, who I am, what I've earned or been given. And I don't expect to change everyone's mind in one meeting. But I came here with clean hands. I've worked every day to be more useful than the day before, and I won't apologize for being noticed because I'm good at what I do." She took a breath. "And I won't pretend I'm not angry. I trusted people who didn't deserve it, but I'm still here. I still show up. And I brought evidence, not rumors." She turned to Grayson, who handed her the drive. She placed it on the table. "This contains surveillance footage, internal access logs, and proof that a forged email was used to try to sabotage a strategic initiative, and that someone in this room helped make it happen, Kenneth scoffed. You expect us to believe some glorified intern cracked a criminal conspiracy? Grayson stood. She didn't crack it, he said, calm and sharp as a blade. She survived it, and she didn't do it alone. He looked around the room, his eyes hard. I did nothing inappropriate. I didn't favor her. I recognized talent and gave it space. If you want to call that favoritism, you'll need to answer why she was the only one doing the work. The board chair reached for the drive. The silence that followed felt like the edge of a cliff, and then Kenneth rose slowly from his chair. He smoothed his tie and walked out. The meeting ended without a conclusion. There would be an investigation, an official review, layers of red tape. But Lila knew something had shifted. People had seen her, not the photo, not the gossip. Her. Back at her desk, a small white box waited. No note. Inside, a miniature plush fox holding a tiny scroll. She unrolled the paper. It read, "Smart foxes don't run, they stand. Even when the storm gets loud." She smiled. She didn't know who sent it, but she knew exactly who it was for. That night she sat by her window with her tea, the two foxes side by side. Her phone buzzed. "Grayson, tomorrow, no meetings. I'm driving you out of town." "Bring something warm," she replied. "Lila, where are we going?" "Grayson, quiet." She stared at the screen for a moment, then at the city, then at her hands. For the first time in weeks, they weren't shaking. But her heart was. Because tomorrow, she might not be falling apart anymore. She might be falling in love. The car ride was mostly silent. Not the uncomfortable kind, but the rare kind. The kind that lives between two people who don't need to fill the air with noise. Grayson drove with one hand on the wheel, eyes steady on the road ahead. His jacket hung on the back seat. His sleeves were rolled, revealing forearms tanned just enough to suggest he spent weekends outside, which surprised her. He didn't seem like the outdoors type. Then again, he didn't seem like the coffee for an assistant type either. Lila stared out the window as the city blurred into trees, sidewalks into fields, and glass into sky. She hadn't asked where they were going. He hadn't offered. She liked it that way. Around them, October leaves swirled in the breeze. Golden, amber, red. It felt like something was turning, and not just the season. They pulled up to a small lake cottage just after noon. It was nestled behind a line of sugar maples. The wood slightly weathered, the windows wide and clean. A canoe leaned against the porch. Wind chimes whispered gently in the breeze. Grayson turned off the engine but didn't move. Lila looked over. "Yours?" "My mother's," he said. "She left it to me. It's the only thing I didn't sell when I took the CEO seat." She didn't ask why. She didn't need to. They stepped inside. The air smelled like cedar and cinnamon. A fire already crackled in the stone hearth, like someone had been here earlier to prepare the space. Maybe he had. Maybe he'd been coming here alone for years. The silence was warmer than any words could have been. He handed her a flannel blanket, and she wrapped it around her shoulders as they sat near the fire. He handed her a mug of hot cider, the real kind, brewed and spiced, not the office kind poured from a packet. "Should I be suspicious you know how to make this?" she asked with a grin. He smiled, and not the polite one, a real one. Slow and rare. "My mother was a teacher," he said. "Every fall, we'd come here the weekend before school started. No phones, no clocks, just cider and puzzles, and her telling me to take a deep breath." She sounds smart. She was. He didn't say more. He didn't have to. Lila sipped quietly. The mug warmed her hands as the fire warmed her feet. "I'm not used to this," she said. "To what?" "Stillness." He looked over at her. "How does it feel?" She hesitated, then smiled, eyes soft. like something I forgot I needed. Later, they walked down to the edge of the lake. The dock creaked under their steps. The water was glass, not a single ripple. Grayson skipped a stone once, twice. It bounced 4 times before vanishing. "I didn't think CEOs skipped rocks," she teased. He chuckled. "They do, just not in public." She turned toward him. "Why did you bring me here?" He didn't answer right away. Then, without looking at her, "Because you were starting to forget who you were." She frowned slightly. "And I didn't want to be the one to let that happen." They made lunch together, grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. She burnt the edges of the bread. He didn't say anything, just scraped it into a bowl and told her, "Perfect," she laughed. "You are so full of it." "And you're terrible at grilling cheese," he replied. "I'm usually better at stress eating it than cooking it." They ate at the small table near the window. Leaves danced just outside the glass. He poured them each a second bowl without asking. She'd never seen him like this, not even close. Here, he was someone else, or maybe just someone more real, or... "You know," she said between bites, "I think I finally get why you don't smile at the office." "Oh yeah?" "Because if you smiled like this in meetings, someone would pass out." He smirked, shook his head. "You really don't have a filter, do you?" "I try to install one. It keeps crashing." After they cleaned up, she found a small bookshelf tucked near the fireplace. Her eyes scanned the spines, old novels, weathered cookbooks, a worn children's picture book with a fox on the cover. She pulled it out. He glanced over. "That one was my favorite," he said. "She used to read it to me when I couldn't sleep." Lila opened the front cover. Inside, in faded ink, was written, "For my little fox. Even when the world gets loud, you know how to listen." Her chest tightened. She looked at him. "You are the fox." He didn't laugh. He didn't deny it. He just nodded. "Some days," he said quietly, "I still need the reminder." They sat in silence again after that. The kind you don't rush through. He watched the fire. She watched him. And then, as the light outside began to fade, he turned to her. "Lila." Her name landed differently out here. Not corporate, not casual, personal. She met his eyes. "I want to be careful," he said, "about this." She nodded. "Me too." "I've never cared what people say about me. But I care what they say about you." Her breath caught, because it wasn't just a compliment. It was a line in the sand. "Oh, I don't know what's ahead," he said, "the board, the fallout. But today I wanted you to remember you're not what they say." Her eyes stung unexpectedly. She reached for his hand without thinking. He didn't pull away. They sat there, hands loosely clasped, the fire casting gold across their skin. It wasn't a kiss, but it was more intimate than one. When they drove back to the city that night, she fell asleep in the passenger seat, her head tilted toward the window, her hands resting in her lap. He didn't wake her when they arrived. He just sat there, watching her in the soft light of the dashboard. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. The next morning, Layla stepped into the office with the smallest smile, a quiet kind of peace, but it didn't last long because sitting on her desk was a single envelope. No name. Inside, a printed version of the children's book cover, a sticky note handwritten in blue ink. "You're not the only one who knows his secrets." Lila stared at the envelope on her desk like it might catch fire. The cover of the children's book, The Listening Fox, had been photocopied in color, the edges slightly frayed as if whoever handled it hadn't been gentle. But it was the sticky note that made her blood run cold. "You're not the only one who knows his secrets." The handwriting wasn't Amanda's, it wasn't Kenneth's either. She'd seen both. This was neat, curved, careful, feminine. She scanned the floor. No one looked her way. No one lingered near her desk. She tucked the envelope into her tote bag and stood, heart pounding so hard it made her ears ring. Grayson was alone in his office, sleeves rolled, jaw set. She didn't knock. He looked up. Saw the look on your face from across the floor, he said softly. What happened? She walked in without a word and laid the envelope on his desk. He opened it. His expression didn't change, but his hand, that steady CEO hand, tightened ever so slightly on the photo. She watched him carefully. You know who sent this? He nodded once. Yes. She waited. He didn't explain. Do you want to tell me? She asked, quieter this time. I will, he said, but not here. She frowned. Why not? Because it's not a business conversation. She stared at him, the way he stood, the way his eyes suddenly refused to meet hers. And just like that, something in her cracked. Was there something in that book only you and she knew? His eyes lifted. You gave me that day like it meant something, she whispered, voice sharp with disappointment. You brought me to your mother's cottage. You told me that book was hers. It was. Then who else knows about it, Grayson? Silence. Then, finally, reluctantly, my ex-wife. The words hit like a wave, cold and deep and unexpected. Lila blinked. You were married? A long time ago. How long? 3 years. Why didn't you tell me? His answer was quiet. Because I didn't want you to think you were part of a pattern. They sat on opposite sides of the office now. Not enemies, not strangers, but suddenly not quite allies either. Does she want something? Lila asked. I don't know, probably. Is she on the board? No, but she's connected to people who are. And if she knows about that book, it means she's been watching you for longer than I realized. Lila folded her arms. She left that message for me, not you. He looked at her, really looked. And for the first time she saw fear in his eyes, not fear of exposure, fear of losing her. Later that night, Lila walked home without taking the train. She needed the air, the movement, the time. She stopped at a corner bench and sat, the streetlights flickering behind her. Her tote rested at her feet. The envelope still inside. She pulled out the photocopy of the listening fox, stared at the tiny handwriting on the sticky note. You're not the only one who knows his secrets. She closed her eyes. She could still feel the warmth of his hand in hers from the cottage, the way he'd said her name like it meant something. But now all she could hear were the things he hadn't said. At home, she took the fox figurine from the windowsill and placed it on her coffee table. It had followed her through deadlines, gossip, sabotage, and now this. For a moment she imagined dropping it, letting it shatter. Would it be a relief? Would it finally let her feel as broken as she was starting to? But her fingers didn't open. They closed tighter. I'm not her, she whispered to it, and I won't be. The next morning, she left the envelope on Grayson's desk, not with a message, but with a question written on the back of the sticky note. Is this the end of your past, or the beginning of mine? She didn't wait for a reply. She walked out of his office, out of the glass walls, and out into a world that, for the first time in weeks, didn't feel like it was spinning around him. She needed to know who she was outside his orbit, outside the tension, outside the spotlight, just Lila. By lunchtime, the fox was gone from her desk. She hadn't taken it. She didn't know who had. Grayson didn't respond to the note, not in the morning, not by lunch. The envelope she'd left on his desk was gone when she walked past his office, but his door stayed shut. His calendar was blocked out, private meetings, off-site calls, the kind of vague busyness that meant something. Or everything was unraveling behind the scenes. Lila didn't ask Eva where he was. She didn't ask anyone. Instead, she focused on her own work. She finished a cross-departmental brief, sent a detailed update to the ethics committee, responded to 3 emails that tried, poorly, to dig for gossip. She did what she always did. She worked. But the absence of the fox on her desk felt louder than any silence Grayson had given her. At 4:03 p.m., a message appeared in her inbox from G. Read subject, my past. You deserve more than a hallway explanation. I'll be at the lake by 7. I left something for you in the glove box. If you come, I'll tell you everything. If not, I'll understand. She stared at it for a long time, then shut her laptop. The drive was quiet, just her and the low hum of the engine. Her coat tucked around her knees, her heart pacing faster than the road signs flying past. When she reached the lake house, the sky was already deep with dusk. The maples out front were almost bare now, just a few stubborn gold leaves clinging to their branches. She parked, killed the engine, and remembered. The glove box. Inside, she found a small white box. She opened it slowly. Inside was the fox, her little ceramic fox. But now it wore something new, a tiny copper ribbon tied gently around its neck and tucked underneath it, folded once. You're not the only one who listens. Her breath caught. Not because of the gift, but because for the first time in weeks, she didn't feel like she was holding something that belonged to her. She felt like she belonged to something. Grayson was inside, waiting by the fireplace, just like the last time. Only now he looked different, less composed, less careful. He was holding the book, The Listening Fox, his thumb resting lightly on the inside cover. On the handwriting, she stepped inside without speaking. He looked up, and everything he hadn't said the day before came rushing forward in his eyes. I married her when I was 27, he said softly. Too young, too proud, too sure I could build a life without making space for the people in it. Lila stood by the door, watching. She didn't leave because I was cruel. She left because I disappeared. Into work, into pressure, into the idea that love wasn't something you tended, just something you claimed and kept. He set the book down on the table between them. She always said I looked past people, even the ones I cared about. I never believed her. Until the elevator. Lila blinked. The day I called you babe? He nodded once. It was the first time in years someone saw me as just a person, not a job, not a title, just a guy in an elevator with coffee and maybe too many regrets. Lila didn't smile. She didn't speak. She just moved toward the fire. I should have told you sooner, he said, but I was scared you'd see it as proof I'd never changed. She finally looked at him. And what if I did? Then I would have deserved it. Her voice was quiet. And now I'm just asking you to choose for yourself. Not because I earned it, not because I fixed it, but because I'm not hiding anymore. The fire popped softly between them. She sat down, let the weight of the moment settle, then reached into her bag and pulled out the fox. She set it next to the book and said, You're not the only one who's afraid of being rewritten. He looked at her. Really looked. What do you mean? She leaned back, her eyes shining but dry. I've spent my whole life trying to be the kind of person no one could question. Clean record, hard work, no gossip, no mess, no surprises. She paused, but it didn't stop them. No, he said quietly, it didn't. And I let it almost stop me. Her voice cracked on that. He moved closer, not touching, not forcing, just near. The way people get when they're trying not to fall but already have. I don't need a rescue, she said. I never wanted to be your rescuer, he replied, just someone who'd stand beside you when it got hard. She looked at him for a long time. And then, with no announcement, no music, no sweeping gesture, she reached for his hand, fingers interlocked, warm, human, true. They stayed like that until the fire died down. No kiss, no promise, just a connection, lit like a low flame that neither of them needed to explain. But when she stood to leave, he followed her to the porch. The wind had picked up now, leaves tumbled across the steps. I still don't know what the board will decide, he said. I don't either, she replied, but I know what I'll choose. He looked at her, gently, hopefully. And what's that? She gave a soft smile. I choose me? Then she stepped down the porch steps. He didn't stop her. He didn't need to. Because halfway to her car she turned back. "I'll see you tomorrow." The boardroom was full, not just of people, but of tension, silence, expectation. The kind that wrapped around the walls and sat on everyone's shoulders. Lila sat near the window, hands folded neatly in her lap, the faint morning light warming her cheek. She wasn't nervous, not anymore, because she'd already survived the worst of it. Now, all that was left was truth. Grayson entered moments before the chairwoman did. Their eyes met briefly across the room, not in a way that said, "I need you," but "I'm with you." He took his seat beside her. No whispered strategy, no last-minute apology, just stillness, strength, presence. The chairwoman began. "This meeting will conclude the formal review of the ethics investigation regarding Grayson Reed and Lila Carter." Lila sat up straighter. She noticed her palms weren't sweating. Her heartbeat didn't stutter. She was ready. The woman continued. "After thorough examination of employee statements, security footage, internal communications, and third-party interviews," a pause. "Wait, we found no ethical violations on the part of Mr. Reed or Ms. Carter." There it was. Lila felt the words settle in her chest, not like relief, but like returning. To herself, to her name, to the truth, the chairwoman added, with the faintest hint of a smile. In fact, Ms. Carter's actions were instrumental in uncovering misconduct that could have had long-term consequences for the company's reputation. Someone at the table shifted uncomfortably. Kenneth was not in the room. He had resigned quietly, late the night before. No press, no spectacle, just gone. After the meeting, no one stopped Lila in the hallway. There were no stares, only a few nods from people who finally saw her not as a rumor, but as a person who had stood her ground. She returned to her desk to find her chair turned slightly, like someone had sat there. A single sticky note was left on her keyboard. "Some people earn titles. You earned trust. E." She smiled, then opened her drawer, and there it was, the fox, back in its place, but with one small addition, a tiny bronze acorn tied to its neck. She lifted it gently. Heart-catching. Grayson had told her weeks ago during a meeting that now felt like a lifetime ago. "My mother used to say, even the smartest fox still plants seeds before winter." She never forgot. Apparently, neither had he. That evening, Lila stepped out of the office alone. No cameras, no whispers. Just wind through the trees and the quiet click of her shoes on the sidewalk. She didn't check her phone. She didn't need a dinner invitation. She already knew where she was going. He opened the cottage door before she knocked, as if he'd known the rhythm of her steps before she took them. No suits this time. Just a dark sweater, sleeves pushed to the elbow, firelight behind him. The same smile that had once surprised her in an elevator, now familiar, grounded, hers. She stepped in. They didn't speak at first. They didn't need to. He handed her a mug of cider, warm like memory. She sipped, then finally asked, "And why did you choose me?" He didn't hesitate. "Because you reminded me of the kind of man I want to be." She swallowed, throat tight. "I thought you were going to say something about spreadsheets," he smiled. "And missed the chance to tell the truth?" "Never again." She stepped closer, close enough that their shadows met before they did. "And what truth is that?" she whispered. He reached for her hand, held it like a promise. "That love is quiet and brave and shows up even when it's inconvenient." Her eyes shimmered. "Good, because I'm done hiding." And then, slowly, without fanfare or audience, he kissed her. A real kiss, not an elevator mistake. Not a maybe someday, just a yes. They sat on the porch as night settled in, legs touching beneath a blanket, stars stitched across the sky. In her lap, the fox rested, the tiny acorn glinting in the moonlight. She turned to him, cheeks flushed from the cider and the warmth of being seen. "Do you think people change?" she asked. He thought for a moment. "No," he said, "I think people remember who they are when someone gives them permission to." She smiled. "You gave me that." He kissed her hand. "You gave it to yourself." The world outside kept spinning, filled with rumors, resumes, restructures. But here, in this quiet corner of it, a woman had reclaimed her name. A man had let go of his armor, and two people, flawed, scarred, and human, had found something worth keeping, not because it was perfect, but because it was earned. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't fight harder or be louder. It's simply refusing to become smaller than you are. To keep showing up with dignity, with love, and with truth. The end. What about you? Have you ever been underestimated and proved someone wrong just by being yourself? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear what part of Lila's journey spoke to you the most. And if you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and rate this story from 0 to 10. See you in the next one. Until then, keep listening like the fox.